Hello again, as Professor Lushin with Lecture 2 for Safety 388, Occupational Safety and Health Standards and Applications. What I'd like to do in this lecture is review the published injury and death statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for 2018, and then we're going to go to the website, and one of the things I want you to do this week is to look at the most current reports, and then let's cover a little bit of accident theory from the course textbook. And that's what I'm going to do. So you're required to read chapters 1 through 3. As you know, the book it's small and it's an easy read. So you should be able to burn through 31 pages in well under a half hour, depending on your speed in which you read. In Lecture 1, I introduced the ANSI standard on the functions of the safety professional. It's ANSI Z590. And the highlighted ones here kind of lay down what we're going to cover in this course. So we're going to talk about the anticipate, identify, and evaluate hazardous conditions practices. That's the focus in Module 1, which are lectures 1 through 6. The hazard control programs will be then the remainder of the semester. And if you're in the safety program, you see that in other courses we handle the development of control programs and the evaluation of those programs. Go back to the OSHA Act. Hopefully you took some time to go to the OSHA website and you're becoming more accustomed or comfortable with using it and searching and interpreting standards, realizing that the general duty clause is the overarching focus. So some things I want you to think about is one is, why should we care about accident injuries? Hopefully there's some sort of morality within you that you're like, yeah, we don't want people to get hurt, but whatever. I want you to think about what are the top 3 causes of death in general, the top 3 causes of death on the job, the top 3 causes of injury and illness on the job, and what are the most expensive injury and illness claims. This is from 2018. We're going to go to the website here after I'm done with the slides. And I want to call attention. So we've got the final rank over here. The number 1 cause of death in 2018 was heart disease. It has been number 1 for a long time. Malignant neoplasms, which is cancer, is number 2. And then what I want you to do is look at the magnitude. You see, we've got 1 and 2, 3 unintentional injury. That's a big drop. It's a little over a quarter, maybe 30% of what this is. And see, that's pretty close. At the same time, what I want you to do is look at the 65 plus. The reason I want you to do that is if you want to talk about odds ratios or prevalence, individuals in the U.S. within this age group have a much higher propensity to die. And so if you look at the total heart disease, and then look at what this group contributes, it's a big part of it. 80% there. If we look here, it's even more, I think. No, maybe it still might be 80%. But if we look at the difference between them, if we were to remove this group, would this still be number 1? Well, it drops it down to 130 or something, and if we were to remove it from here, it drops it down to about 160. So cancer would become number 1. That's off the top of my head, of course. And unintentional injury is way down here. So it would still be, this would be above 100,000. So it still is very competitive. Chronic low with that would drop down to 20. So that would basically disappear. That would drop down to about 20. That would disappear. That's almost a total. It's like 95%. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to reconfigure it when you either remove or consider one group. If we go to the 55-64, if we take these and these, that's 545. There's just, 50 left almost. Not a lot. If we take the heart disease in this one, it goes up to over 600. So, yeah, there's still enough there. But I just, unintentional injury is the number 1 cause for, once you get past 1 year old, all the way up to 44, and then it drops to 3rd. So you can kind of see like a trend overall, that after the age 45, the chance of cancer or heart disease goes up, and it's very high when you get above 65. Makes you kind of think, what you should be doing today to try to extend your life. Let's go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics now. That was the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or just CDC. This is the 2018 numbers. 2018, there were 5,250 deaths or fatalities in the workplace. And let's compare them side by side. We can look at annual trends, but look at transportation accidents. I mean, it's like double or over double the number 2 cause, which is falls, slips, and trips. If we look at, and then if we compare these, it's interesting. Slip, trip, falls, contact with objects, and violence by persons or animals. There's a lot of consistency there. And as this has gone up and kind of evened out, this went up and then dropped, this went up, down, up, this went down, up, up. And then exposure to harmful substance kind of falls into like the 5th place. But it's got the most consistent increase in trends. And then fires and explosions, again, quite a bit below. So what I want you to do is look at 2019 and see, did these trends change, or did one of these go up? Next, these are the non-fatal injuries, injury and illness by incidence rate. So it's a rate per 10,000 full-time workers, or the equivalency. This would be ergonomic related injuries, but there's a consistent drop. I mean, we focus on this topic quite a bit in safety, but it's still, even its 2018 low is still higher than the highest from 2014, which was slip, trip, fall. So ergonomic, slip, trip, falls, contact with objects, and then there's a big drop. It's about a third to violence and then transportation accidents. So I think that's really interesting, don't you? That so you're not going to die from ergonomics, but we get transportation, slip, trip, fall, contact, and violence, and they all are represented here, but in different proportions. I just think that's interesting, personally. As far as nature of injury, which is the outcome, sprains, strains, tears, number 1, because those are more aligned with ergonomic. Soreness and pain, well, I can probably fall anywhere, and then we've got to drop down to these 3. As far as costs, looks like this was published in 2019. This is from Liberty Mutual Group. These typically do not change much. The top 10 account for about 85% of the total amount paid. Overexertion with outside sources, look at it's the biggest amount, falls on the same level. So it's just kind of usually slipping or tripping, not particularly falling to another level. Right there, you're at 42% approximately, and 23 billion. And then there's quite a bit of a jump down to here. These two are pretty close. A little bit of a jump, and then we got the remaining here. The 10 most costly workplace injuries this is breakdown by industry itself. You can see that construction incurs the most amount of direct costs. Professional business services second, and what the top 5 incurs. And so overexertion for all injuries for construction is falls, and so is professional services. It's second here. So the reason why overexertion is number 1 overall, but not here, is because we don't have as many people employed in construction professional services. We tend to have a lion's share in these industries, so therefore they force it number 1. Just like how over 65 pushes the heart disease to number 1. Same thing. Here's a breakdown of incidence rates for non-fatal by private industry in 2018. So as far as an incidence rate, so the most dangerous industry is agricultural, forestry, fishing, and hunting. But from an overall number, it's healthcare, social assistance. So there is, the greater the number of workers, that drives down it can bring down the incidence rate, because it's a rate versus a number of cases. So pure number of cases, it's the healthcare, social assistances, which I think is like NAICS 6.2. Number 2 would be manufacturing. Number 3 would be retail trade. But if we go from a pure incidence rate, agricultural, then transportation, warehousing, then arts and entertainment. So when you read the chapters now, I want you to pay special attention to what Oakley says. He does a really good job, which is why I keep using his book. That you can, I think he does a really good job of saying, well, we could argue the semantics of terms, But in the end, what we need to do is realize we need to prevent incidents, prevent accidents. Let's not waste energy focusing too much on the definition, arguing about it. I think that's a good thing. He talks about near miss. We'll talk about Heinrich here pretty soon, and how a majority of unsafe acts or unsafe conditions or unsafe exposures, I should say, do not result in injury. But still, we can learn, we can get valuable insight into those exposures and study them to come up with better control strategies. That we don't have to wait, or we shouldn't wait until someone gets seriously injured before we do something. Though that tends to be the default reaction or how it's typically done. But to really get good at safety, you should really try to understand that, or study safety from the aspect of work itself, like I do. He also discusses risk as a calculation of probability times severity, which I think we'll be talking about later, and that residual risk is basically the risk that is accepted by the company. That, yeah, we know that people can still get injured, but we're willing to accept it because of what that number is. Sorry, my nose is running. For post-accident response, first we have to make sure that the worker gets the treatment they need. But the way in which we approach the accident investigation, I think that Oakley does a good job of describing it. That the way I teach it is that you need to suspend your natural tendency to blame the worker for injuring themselves or for causing it. They didn't commit to whatever behavior or action it was with the intent of getting hurt. So they just didn't fully understand, or they suspended their perception of risk or their chance of getting hurt, and they got hurt because they were focused on getting the work done. So the goal of an accident investigation is to look beyond the worker to find out what we could do to either redesign the job, bring in different tools of equipment, different instructions, whatever it might be, so that if we were to take out the person who did get hurt and put in a different person, that they wouldn't act the same way because of the changes in design. We can call it post-accident response, post-incident investigation, whatever you want to call it. But in many ways, the way in which it's approached, workers see that. And if they perceive that they're going to get blamed, they're more likely not to report when they get hurt because they don't want to get in trouble. That's a natural tendency, self-protection. And so Oakley does talk about this, that it'd be better to take an unbiased learning approach to workplace safety than it is to 0 injuries, and if you get hurt, we're going to blame you and fix you. I think if you talk to anybody who's practiced in the field, I think they'd be able to relate to that basic observation. Oakley does a good job of providing a variety of accident theories and models. All have their applications and strengths and weaknesses. It really depends on what industry and what situation you're in. Most importantly is whatever allows you to look past the worker. When you do your investigation, that will be the best one. When I was in graduate school, I was taught the balance model, or the balance theory for job design, and I adopted it as my construct for understanding what could cause an injury or pre-injury investigations. Because it's based on all the foundational research literature that I consumed when I was in graduate school, and it's created, the basis for my approach. There's also an article by Pierce in 2002 in Professional Safety, which is ASSP's flagship publication, on systems thinking. So this is a systems approach to safety. So it's been rearranged here, and over on the right here we've got the person: no exposure, no injury, exposure, no injury, then we got exposure and injury. Those are, the 3 main outcomes. If we only focus on the person, trying to fix the person, blame the person, we will never ever get to the root cause of why it occurred. And that root cause is going to be somewhere back in the system itself, the organization, the environment, the task, and technology, because that's what created the perception of what needs to get done for the worker. So if we can get the worker the person who was either exposed and not injured or exposed and injured, to share with us what their perception of what needs to get done is, and then we can then track back to the conditions that allowed that perception to dominate or persuade the worker to get into the situation where they got exposed, whatever hurt them. We actually stand a chance of resolving what actually needs to get done. So, quick review. Oh, actually, let's go look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the CDC, because that's where I'm going to want you to go look in order to answer the questions for this week. So let's go ahead and open, and I did provide you with links. So here's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Here is the CDC. So I believe these numbers, and so you can just kind of scroll this. So we've got deaths for this is 2018, that's what we looked at. I thought they had 2020. Oh, here's 2019 data. Let's see what this is here. And I do know that, okay, so this is, no, this is more broad stuff. There's usually a delay in coming out. Top 10 causes. Heart disease, number 1, cancer, number 2. These are number 3. Okay, so that's what we expected. But more importantly, when 2020 data comes out, we're going to see that COVID-19 is actually the 3rd leading cause. And see, it's 375 here, so that'll be all ages. Above 65 is probably a majority of that. That will come in a pretty close 3rd, if I remember correctly, from what they were. It was like 560 or 650, 590, and 375, and then the other accidents, I believe, were somewhere in the middle there. So heart disease, okay, 690, 598, 345. Okay, so that's the numbers. So really, when 2020 numbers come out, that's going to be interesting. But I want you to get in here and kind of dig around and take a look at this stuff and look at it the same way I looked at it. Let's go to Bureau of Labor Statistics. So now 2019 reports are out. Here's the total number of injuries. We've got the fatalities down here. Remember, it was 5,250 in 2018. It did go up. So let's look at some of that stuff. So what I do is I go over on the left and go to national data, and I've got the fatality and non-fatal. Let's start with the fatal. And it's called the CFOI, the Census of Fatal Occupational Injuries. Here's the news release. Interactive charts are sometimes kind of fun to look at. Miscellaneous tables. Let's go look at the charts here versus just numbers. Oh, is it not going to let me look at this stuff? I kind of want to see the causes. By event. Hopefully that does it. Yeah, we're getting a little bit long in the video. Sorry about this. Vehicular should be number 1. Slip, trip, and fall number 2. Usually this goes faster. It's just because I'm recording. Transportation, falls. Oh, it looks like violence would be number 3. Contact would be number 4. Exposure, 642, would be number 5. Fire explosion is a big drop. So the trend continued, but the numbers themselves may be of interest. I wonder what went up from 2018, and that's something I'd want you to look at. So let's go back. And let's look at the non-fatal. So I want you to go in and kind of dig around in here. This is, for being a safety professional, not only being proficient in using the OSHA website, but being able to use the Bureau of Labor Statistics is very important. So the non-fatal injuries and illnesses, this is the SOII, or the Survey of Occupational Injury and Illness Data. Let's go to the charts. Not available for 2019. Okay. So let's, that really doesn't help us then, does it? Let's go to charts and just see what happens. Okay, so 2019, prior year. So this might just be 2018 again. So you may actually have to just compare numbers. Summary tables. Let's see what happens when I click on this. I think it's just carrying us around. Yeah, this is just going to give us detailed numbers. So I guess we don't have that yet. We have the 2019 numbers. We can look at the summary here. I'll look at it through HTML. I usually like to look at things through PDF, but we're already over 20 minutes for this. And they do some interpreting for us. This isn't great to read. This isn't as fun as the pictures, is it? No. Okay, so please go to those two websites, kind of play around to see what it is. I want you to do the same sort of logic that I had applied here, that, you know, is one group dominating or is it representative of the overall? And we'll be hopefully either on the discussion board or in one-on-one, I want to talk more about this.